Good afternoon and welcome to today's operational information update on the flooding and landslide situation in BC. For today's briefing, we'll have updates from Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General Mike Farnworth, Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Rob Fleming, Janelle State, also with Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure South Coast Region, Paula Cousins, Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure Interior Region, Dave Campbell with the River Forecast Centre, Deputy Commissioner Dwayne McDonald, Commanding Officer of RCMP E Division, and finally, Armel Castellan with Environment and Climate Change Canada. A reminder to media on the line, please press *1 to enter the queue. You will be limited to one question and one follow-up. With that, I'll turn it over to Minister Farnworth.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm honored to be here on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people and the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations. Joining me today is Minister Rob Fleming, Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure, along with representatives from the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, the River Forecast Centre, the RCMP, and Environment and Climate Change Canada. Following the announcement by the RCMP today, I would first like to extend my condolences to the family of the person who lost their life on Highway 99. And I want to take this opportunity to ask anyone who is a witness to the event or believes their loved one is missing and has not yet been able to make contact to reach out to the Pemberton or Lillooet RCMP detachments. Today, we're providing an update on our response to the significant flooding and mudslides we're seeing across the southern half of the province. This has been an extreme weather event. And while the River Forecast Centre has issued 16 advisories since Saturday, and travelling warnings were continually issued by Dry BC, weather specialists have noticed that the impacts have been significantly greater than expected. Emergency Management BC is supporting local governments as we work together to get through this unprecedented rainfall. There are over 20 reception centres open around BC, and several states of local emergency and evacuation alerts and orders have been declared. While there were 3 landslide incidents cutting off traffic on our highways, all of those stranded motorists have now been rescued and taken to shelter and appropriate supports in nearby communities. Search and rescue teams and the RCMP have been sweeping impacted areas to make sure that no one has been left behind. People from Merritt have been evacuated to either Kamloops or Kelowna. We are seeing significant efforts to move healthcare patients and long-term care and assisted living residents out of flood areas safely. Hope is supporting about 1,100 evacuees with meals, and about 900 people have been sleeping at the church and the high school. And I want to thank the community for all that they are doing. While facilities are limited in Hope, EMBC is working with BC Wildfire Service to get food, water, cots, and blankets to people with their aircraft. Also in Hope, there's an access road being worked on right now that will soon reconnect Hope with the rest of the Lower Mainland. One of our key priorities is on making sure there's a flow of supplies so that people can buy food and essential goods in areas with flooded or damaged roads or railways. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all the first responders, local governments, and volunteers who have been working around the clock, responding to the flooding and helping people in need. What we're seeing is a natural disaster. Our province continues to prepare our infrastructure and communities for future events, including work to overhaul the Emergency Program Act. But that said, multiple highways remain closed throughout BC, causing disruptions to travel. And I encourage everyone to be flexible with their travel plans. That said, now is not the time to travel or to travel through any areas affected by this emergency. I'll now pass over this update to Minister Rob Fleming for a further update. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Farnworth, and good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm grateful to be joining from the territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people, the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. These have been an extraordinary, challenging few days in our province, and there will be many weeks of recovery working together ahead. And I would like to thank at this point all of those thousands of people who have stepped up in response to this unprecedented weather event. Hundreds and hundreds of people have worked long hours in dreadful conditions through the night to keep people safe. Members of the Canadian military, search and rescue volunteers, local government officials, fire departments and volunteers, and provincial staff, both from Emergency Management BC and the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure and our road maintenance contractors and countless others. The way that people have come together is inspirational to get people to warmth and safety. And with the cessation of the worst weather storm in a century past us, our staff now have an opportunity to see firsthand the impacts on our infrastructure. We've had people just this morning flying by helicopter along the various impacted highways and road networks. Today on those road networks, we had geotechnical engineers looking at the impacts, looking at the sites, and ensuring that conditions are safe to begin the cleanup and to reopen our transportation arteries. We'll be doing that assessment through staff of our infrastructure damage, and then we'll be putting together more specific repair plans for those sites that have encountered significant damage. And that is our number one priority, is getting our roadways back up and in operation, and we will provide whatever resources are necessary to make that happen. Our maintenance contractors have gathered all the heavy equipment they can. They are ready to clear roads. They are waiting for the signal of when it is safe to do so, and on many of our highways. We fully recognize how important it is right now in British Columbia to reopen the road connections from the Lower Mainland to the interior to get supply chains moving again. Staff across many ministries and agencies are prioritizing this in our planning. It is an unprecedented level of cooperation as well with federal and local governments. I want to praise the efforts that have helped Highway 7 west of Agassiz reopen today to emergency vehicles so that we're beginning to be able to get stranded passengers out of areas where they are sheltering. Crews are currently clearing Highway 7 from Agassiz to Hope, and we hope to have access by late afternoon today. Another priority is regaining access to the interior through Highway 3, which looks to be the quickest route to reopen, and we will have updates to the public on those efforts as we have crews deployed and work is undertaken. Some of this will be confirmed in terms of timelines shortly. We will update people on what this route looks like and whether it can be reopened by the end of the weekend. We're also working with Transport Canada to reestablish supply chains for communities that currently are cut off. This will begin with the essential movement of goods and supplies in coordination with Transport Canada. Other routes will clearly take longer, including the Coquihalla and Highway 1 through the Fraser Canyon. Based on the images that people have seen, the infrastructure damage there is significant. Let me just say in closing that this is a challenging time, and we will get through this. Our government will do everything we can to get transportation links open as soon as possible and get people and goods moving. I want to say a word of appreciation for my counterpart, Minister Al Gabra, the Federal Minister of Transportation, for his offer of support from the federal government for all of the needs that British Columbians will encounter today, tomorrow, and in the days ahead. And I would thank all the emergency crew workers that have worked tirelessly day and night for many, many days now to keep people safe, and to all those people in the public who, out of caring and compassion, have also stepped up in a voluntary capacity to help their friends and neighbors in these difficult times. Thank you.
Our next operational update comes from Janelle State, Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, South Coast Region.
Good afternoon. So I'll start with an update in the Lower Mainland. So I'll start on Highway 1. In Highway 1, between sort of Hope and Popcom, we have 5 individual sites where we have debris accumulated and causing damage along the road. So our contractors are out there with equipment and starting to work on the material in those areas, but there is significant amount of material with widespread debris along the corridor. So as Minister Fleming said, more updates to come on the timing on the Highway 1 corridor in the Hope area. Continuing west on Highway 1 towards the Sumas area, we currently have a closure between McCallum and Yale as a result of Yale Road as a result of flooding. Significant water from the Sumas as well as the Nooksack rivers have created significant water over the highway at this point. It's waiting for the waters to recede to be able to assess the damage on the Highway 1 corridor and be able to make a determination as to what's next in terms of repairs and potential reopenings. As I move over to the Highway 7 corridor, as Minister Fleming mentioned, west of Agassiz, we have had crews out there who have been able to move debris to open the corridor to emergency traffic only on that stretch of the corridor, continuing to do work along that corridor, but significant amount of material on that stretch of Highway 7. East of Agassiz, we also have a few sites of debris over top of Highway 7, some materials along there, but we're continuing to move along through that with the hopes of being able to restore that access to emergency traffic later this evening and into tomorrow. So efforts are ongoing by our contractor with many pieces of equipment available and actively working. As we move along to Highway 3, we currently have just completed flying the Highway 3 section in the Sunshine Valley and confirmed there's some segments of debris and material over the highway corridor. So our contractor has been now able to mobilize equipment to the west end of that site. And as we complete our geotechnical assessments, we'll be able to start moving the material on that corridor. And as we start moving it, we'll have a better understanding of our timelines for being able to look at access in the coming days of an update. Continuing further east along the Highway 3 corridor towards Princeton, east of Princeton, we still have flooding in that area. And once the water recedes, which it has been promisingly showing signs of, we'll be able to undertake an assessment and determine next steps around reopening that portion of the corridor. Highway 11 remains closed in the Lower Mainland, both north and south of Highway 1. South of Highway 1, extreme flooding, and north of Highway 1, we have some significant warping of the road as a result of the significant water that we've seen through that area. And moving on over to Vancouver Island on Highway 1, the Malahats, this morning we were able to restore the Malahat to single lane alternating traffic just after 8 a.m. Crews have been underway overnight and now working throughout the day and actively looking at excavating out the northbound lanes, and that will require closures over the next 6 nights of full closures between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. of the Malahat corridor to enable crews to be able to rebuild the northbound segment of the road. We've been working closely with BC Ferries, and they've just recently confirmed that they've been able to provide 4 additional sailings on the Brentwood Bay ferry between Mill Bay and Brentwood Bay. Again, remind folks that you can check Drive BC for the travel times, but small sailings, so we need to ensure that really is essential movement only. If you don't need to be on any of these roads, please do avoid travel and make sure when you're traveling through the areas that you're adhering to all the signs to make sure that our contractors are safe. Thank you.
Our next operational update comes from Paula Cousins, Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, Interior Region.
Good afternoon. As you've already heard today, we have done some aerial assessments of Highway 5, the Coquihalla Highway. Those were completed today, and I can confirm that at least 5 structures have been compromised and there's multiple washouts along the route. So that corridor is going to require significant repairs before traffic will be able to move on it again. Highway 1 remains closed at Spence's Bridge. As Minister Fleming alluded, there are washouts north and south of Lytton at Tank Hill and Jackass Mountain, and the Nickman Bridge has experienced considerable damage as well. Moving to Highway 12 between Lytton and Lillooet, it remains closed. The site was cleared by our geotechnical engineers this morning and cleanup work got underway immediately. We are anticipating opening of Highway 12 later today and encourage motorists to monitor Drive BC for updates. Highway 99 remains closed south of Lillooet. We were given geotechnical approval to begin cleanup earlier today, but only during daylight hours due to safety reasons. So again, that work got underway immediately. We have as much equipment working at the site as it will allow, and we'll have a better sense of opening timelines for Highway 99 tomorrow. Highway 8 between Merritt and Spence's Bridge remains closed. We were able to assess that corridor today as well, and it's experienced significant damage with multiple sections of the highway washed out, and a bridge has also been washed away along Highway 8. Highway 1 is open between Kamloops and Golden. We are at single lane alternating traffic at the Enchanted Forest due to some rocks and debris, but able to keep that corridor open. So overall, core conditions have stabilized along many of our other routes, and we just want to close by, I'd like to close by reminding people to be prepared when heading out on the roads, checking Drive BC, making sure you've got a full tank of gas and an emergency kit, and just want to encourage all motorists to slow down and drive to conditions right now as our crews are full out trying to respond to these emergencies. Thank you.
Our next operational update comes from Dave Campbell with the River Forecast Center.
Great, thank you and good afternoon. I'll be providing a quick update on river conditions and forecast across the province. Obviously significant in terms of geographic scope of where we've seen flood flows over the past couple of days, spanning from Vancouver Island over through the Lower Mainland and up into the interior. With the moving of the atmospheric river out of the region yesterday, we have seen rainfall rates ease, and that has brought about general easing in river levels. So we've experienced the flood peaks across the province, and we are seeing river levels dropping at this point. We are seeing, for the most part, that get below the flood stage through many areas, but high flows do remain and flood flows through a number of areas. We still have flood warnings in effect up through the Merritt and Coldwater and Nicola systems, as well as in the Tulameen area and in the Sumas area around the Lower Mainland, Fraser Valley. We've also kept the flood watch up for the Fraser Valley, particularly with some of the lake-driven systems along the northern side that are still quite high. So in terms of outlook for the coming days, we are expecting to see that continued improvement in river levels as we continue to get dry conditions, and Environment Canada will provide more updates in terms of the weather forecast side of things. That's it from the update from the River Forecast Center side. Thanks.
Our next operational update comes from Deputy Commissioner Dwayne McDonald, Commanding Officer of RCMP E Division.
Good afternoon and thank you. I'm speaking to you today from the traditional territories of the Katzie, Kwantlen, and Simiamu First Nations. On behalf of the BC RCMP, I want to share with you that over the past 48 hours, the province of British Columbia has experienced a significant environmental event that has impacted communities and infrastructures across the province, including policing. These impacts have required us to review how policing is being provided in the most affected communities and adjust our services accordingly. Fortunately, the direct impacts on our police services have been manageable and we are working directly with our partner agencies to address community needs. Our Divisional Emergency Operations Center continues to monitor and support all of our districts in the province, while also working closely with our provincial and federal partners. Although we've had to modify how we're working, I would like to reassure British Columbians that all police services are still being provided. The impacts on roadways and infrastructure have required RCMP detachments to shift some of our responses to neighboring RCMP areas of responsibility. So this may mean that when a person calls their local RCMP, an RCMP officer from a neighboring community may attend. Regardless, we have maintained a presence and we remain in evacuated areas and are continuing to conduct patrols. I would like to take this opportunity to confirm that we have one known fatality, as previously reported, as a result of the mudslide near Lillooet. Our thoughts and our prayers are with her family and friends as they deal with this devastating loss. I'm also aware of concerns that there may be additional victims in the mudslide near Lillooet. Search and rescue specialists are conducting significant work in this area, and the RCMP will continue to remain involved in these searches. We will provide more information regarding fatalities as soon as possible. If people have family or friends that have not been heard from, who may have been driving or live in the areas affected by these slides, I ask that they contact either the local RCMP detachment, or if the RCMP does not police their community, contact the nearest RCMP detachment. A full list of our detachments can be found on the BC RCMP website. We recognize that this storm has impacted people from across the province, and we will continue to provide updates when possible. I want to assure the public that your safety is our first priority. So please continue to monitor Drive BC and any local evacuation alerts and orders. Most importantly, remain calm, be patient, and respect and adhere to the direction of emergency personnel. Thank you.
Our final operational update today comes from Armel Castellan, Environment and Climate Change Canada.
Hi, thank you very much for having me on this call. And our agency condolences for this devastating news regarding a fatality. As an agency, we're moving from impact-based forecasting, from hazard-based forecasting to impact-based forecasting, and this is the last thing that we would like to hear about such a big event. Just quickly, I'll recap the event and speak to the forecast in just a moment. We've done some number crunching, as you can imagine, seeing the wettest 24 hours on record for any day of the year for places like Abbotsford, Chilliwack, and Hope puts a little bit of context into how extreme this event was. We can also calculate the rarity of this event by looking at how much of a return period this event had, and we look at the 2 days and 3 days, and they all point towards a widespread 1 in 50 year event, with actually many locations seeing a 1 in 100 year event. So that is putting into context how anomalous this event was. And what's also good to consider is what is consistent with climate change projections, how atmospheric rivers will become more potent and perhaps longer lasting than what we even saw this past weekend. So something to consider as we go forward in the next decades. Now, as for the forecast, we are lucky. We have a ridge building today, and we saw the sun for many locations, a few flurries still at some elevations, but not large quantities. We will continue that trend tomorrow. We have a little bit of a storm mostly affecting Washington State, but will affect the South Coast with maybe 5 to 10 millimeters, but nothing in comparison to what we saw last weekend. And then another dry couple of days for Friday and Saturday, with the potential of a return to fairly active weather early next week. So that's my update. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes today's operational updates. A reminder to media on the line, please press *1 to enter the queue. You will be limited to 1 question and 1 follow-up. Our first question today goes to Richard Zussman, Global News.
Minister Farnworth, are you considering putting in some sort of state of emergency in order to protect from hoarding, which I know the province did in the early stages of the COVID-19 pandemic, based on what we're seeing in areas of Kamloops and Chilliwack and other areas? Is there a consideration to ban non-essential travel from the roadways in order to ensure that once some of the roads get open, there will be an ability for trucks to move through to support supply chains? And I know you spoke to this a bit, but can you be clear to people on what sort of timing they should expect, how long they should expect to be stranded in places like Hope without access by road to Kamloops or Vancouver? Is there any sense of timing for people?
Okay. Thank you for the question, Richard. On the first part of your question, today has been very much a day about assessment in terms of the damage that is out there and the challenges that we are facing on the infrastructure front. I can tell you that as a province-wide state of emergency is very much on the table. Tomorrow we have a cabinet meeting, and I will be going forward with my colleagues with a full briefing to cabinet, and I fully expect decisions will be coming out of that cabinet meeting. In terms of the timing of people being evacuated, in particular to the Hope area, as Minister Fleming outlined, there is the road that is going through in terms of emergency vehicles right now to open up Hope. What I want to also stress is that people are in Hope. They're not stranded on highways. They are in Hope. There are supplies being delivered to ensure that there are cots, there are blankets, there are food. Currently, the town of Hope is feeding and supporting almost 1,100 people are being fed. They're doing an absolutely incredible job. and our key priority is to ensure that the supplies are in there so that people do have a place to sleep, they have food, and they have warmth and shelter. And obviously, the top priority in terms of getting that access open so that people are able to leave as soon as possible. And in terms of the road and the timing around that, I will ask Minister Fleming if he has further updates as to what he's already announced. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Farnworth, and thank you, Richard, for the question. We will have updates as we open that road for emergency purposes, perhaps even later this afternoon, as I mentioned. Crews are working on this very hard right now. It's our #1 priority is to try and gain access through Hope, and all of the things that would flow from that, like being able to move people back to their communities, will be part of that update.
Richard, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I'm still trying to understand what the province is doing to help with the supply chains. But Minister Farnworth, I also want to know, you were asked about this yesterday. I know we're still in a time of assessing damage, but should the province have sent out greater alerts to people? In the United States, they were sending out, Washington State, they were sending out flood alerts early in the weekend. BC did not do that. We relied heavily on social media. Should there not have been a text alert to individuals about these warnings, or should you not have held a press conference warning people about this? And what lessons can be learned? Like, will the province adjust the way that it communicates with people around the possibility of these types of emergencies?
Thank you for that question. We've been in an unprecedented natural disaster, and this province has been through a number of them over the last few years. In context of alerting, alerting took place in terms of the flood warnings that were stream flow advisories that went to local communities. Drive BC was outlining weather conditions on a regular basis in terms of the state of condition on our highways and closures. There was significant warning in terms of weather and the rain that was coming, that was out on the media and on the weather networks. All of that was taking place. But what we saw was an absolutely unprecedented deluge, torrential deluge like we have never seen before. And so, significant work was underway. Crews were out, both within the Ministry of Transportation and Highways and in communities right across the province that were going to be impacted. So there was a lot that was undertaken. Obviously, after any event such as this, the province assesses what's taken and lessons learned and planning for the future. We know that climate change is a reality that is here to stay. It's one of the reasons why we've undertaken the work in terms of completely revamping the Emergency Program Act and how we approach and deal with emergencies, recognizing that climate change and events such as what we've seen are going to become, more and more common. So there's been a lot of work being done.
Next question goes to Penny Daflos, CTV.
Much. I'd just like to know, whether it's on roadways or in impacted towns, how many people are unaccounted for in our province today?
We have. That's why we've asked the RCMP, or have asked if anyone was a witness to the event that occurred near Lillooet, or they have a loved one who may have been in that area and they've not heard from, to contact the RCMP. In terms of the number of people, I think I'll ask the RCMP to comment on that. What I can tell you is that they have been, in terms of the highway where the slides were, rescued everybody that was there. They have been sweeping the area, that is going back and checking to make sure that that any vehicles are there are accounted for, or that the people from those vehicles are accounted for. And that work continues. But I will ask the RCMP if they have additional comments for that question.
Over to Deputy Commissioner Dwayne McDonald.
Thank you for the question. At present, in addition to the one fatality that has been confirmed, we have 2 additional reports of individuals that are missing. But that is all that we received at this point in time. And again, we do encourage individuals to, if they have a loved one that they have not heard from or associate, please contact their local RCMP detachment.
Do you have a follow-up, Penny?
I do, thank you. There are a number of people who have stayed behind in Merritt despite the evacuation order. Some of them say that they have nowhere else to go, that anywhere they try to find accommodations is fully booked. They're worried about finding food and water elsewhere. They're hunkering down at home, and they're also worried about looting. And so, Minister, I just wonder, your response to this, that people feel that they have to stay at home to protect their homes in Merritt despite the dangers there, and what you'd like to say to them.
As the RCMP, Mr. McDonald has already indicated, the RCMP are on patrol. They are in the communities that they are protecting. And so they are very much alive to the concerns and situations of residents. I can tell you that they are doing an incredible job, and that they will continue to do that. So people should have every confidence that the RCMP are there in their communities, protecting life and protecting property. In terms of people who feel that the need to stay behind, there are evacuation centers set up and support centers set up in more than 20 communities across the province. And in the case of Merritt in particular, Kamloops and Kelowna, where they have the support to find people the accommodation that they need. And so people are able to access that, and I encourage them to do so.
Our next question comes from Amanda Lena Laterio, CFJC News.
Hi, Minister Fleming. Are there portions of the highway where single-lane traffic can accommodate traffic from the interior to the Lower Mainland?
Thank you for the question. That's why the focus is on Highway 3 right now. We think that's the most viable route to reopen. You heard our regional director talk about the visuals that were attained by helicopter today, the amount of debris that was there, and the mobilizing of heavy equipment. So we will have updates as they become available when that route may be reopened. Coquihalla, obviously, as I said, and the Fraser Canyon Highway are going to take a significant while longer, and we won't even have a proper assessment of the damage sustained until conditions dry out and additional geotechnical assessments can happen. But we are looking to reopen as many routes as we can. Here on Vancouver Island, Highway 1 has reopened to single alternating traffic. We are going to close that highway, though, in the evening between 7 p.m. Starting tonight and 6 a.m. so that crews can get in there and clear off much more debris from the highway and continue to improve road conditions on Highway 1 here, and that's the process we'll follow on other highways as well. We'll get them open so that movement can happen, and then the cleanup effort will happen simultaneously with restricted traffic flows. All of those will be covered by advisories on who we want traveling, who we don't want traveling, and whether there are openings and closures of our highways as we get them assessed and possible for reopening.
Amanda Lena, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, Minister Farnworth. Some smaller scale grocery stores are considering chartering cargo planes for deliveries. Is this something the government would consider supporting financially?
What I can tell you is that when it comes to supply chains, I think patience is the word of the day. While yes, there are challenges on our highways, particularly numbers 1, 3, and 5, there is lots of supply. There is, for example, in northern and the interior, the rail links from Kamloops to the rest of Canada are operating. The truck routes from east to west across northern BC through Alberta to bring goods and supplies in are operating. Transportation and highways, as you've heard, is working on how we can get goods flowing Vancouver up. So there are challenges, but there are also options, and so we would encourage people to recognize this and to remember patience, and there is still lots of supplies.
Our next question goes to Alex McKean of The Star.
Thank you. Deputy Commissioner Dwayne McDonald, I wanted to ask you what else you can tell us about the ongoing investigation that is happening at the site of the slide near Lillooet. Can you tell us about the size of the area that is being investigated? How many cars have been moved by that mudslide that took place that resulted in that one fatality? And if you can confirm that those 2 reports of individuals who are missing, was it reported that they were missing from that area?
Thank you for your question. Although I can't give you specific numbers of vehicles or a specific distance along that highway, it is the Lillooet slide that we're talking about along Highway 99 there. Part of the challenge with efforts to search that area is just given the safety of the rescue personnel that are going in. As you can imagine, with a significant amount of debris and that is washed over the road, it's very difficult if vehicles aren't visible at first sight to be able to locate them. So we continue to search that area. Yes, the 2 reported persons that are missing were believed to have been traveling along that area, so that's where our focus is right now.
Alex, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, thanks for that response. Minister Farnworth, we heard you refer to this event as an absolutely unprecedented torrential deluge like we've never seen before. Will you name this event, as well as some of the previous climate-related events that we've experienced in the last year here in BC, as climate change-related events? And has that become part of what your role is as Minister of Public Safety to deal with climate change?
I have no doubt that these are climate-related events. They are unprecedented in their nature. And as we are, have been warned and told to expect more of these as our climate changes. Our challenge is to ensure that we're able to adapt and to meet these disasters. And that's one of the reasons why our government has taken the issue of climate change so seriously. And in the case of my own ministry, that's why early on appointment to this post in 2017, I had us as a province and our government became the first jurisdiction outside the federal government in this country to sign up to the Sendai framework, which is the model in terms of emergency preparedness legislation and how to deal with that, encompassing not just response, but rather 4 key principles of mitigation, being proactive, response, and recovery. That work has been ongoing. COVID has had an impact on that. Climate change is very much a focus in it, and I expect to have that legislation to the House next year. It is an all of government approach, not just a one ministry approach.
Our next question comes from Alana Kelly, Glacier Media.
My one question is really, why was that highway not shut down? Why were people allowed to travel along Highway 99? That slide happened Monday, and what would it have taken to close that highway?
Travel advisories in terms of Drive BC regularly update the conditions on highways. People travel for a variety of reasons, many of them essential. That's why it's important in terms of the if you're going out to check with Drive BC to check on the highway conditions before proceeding out.
Do you have a follow-up, Alana?
Yes. When will that debris area, I know you might not have an answer to this, but when do you suspect that that will be concluded, the searching of Highway 99?
I think I'll ask our regional director to answer that, because they have crews on the scene today that may have more up-to-date information than I do.
Yes, please go ahead. I believe that was the South Coast region, so that would be Janelle State.
It's Paula Cousins.
Paula Cousins, please go ahead. Thank you.
Thanks. So we are working very closely with Search and Rescue and the RCMP through that process as we work to clean up the site. and obviously very carefully working together. So we are anticipating we're going to be at least a few days in cleanup there and recovery.
Thank you very much, everyone. That's all the questions we have for today. That concludes today's operational update.